I'm delighted to be joined by Martin Renaud, EVP and Chief Marketing and Sales Officer at Mondelēz International. Cadbury is a new entry into this year's Kantar BrandZ Top 20 Most Valuable Global Food and Beverage Brands with a brand value of $5.4 billion. Cadbury has very strong brand equity, particularly in the UK. A huge congratulations to you, Martin, and everyone at Mondelēz for this achievement.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and very proud of that achievement. Cadbury is a very important brand for Mondelēz International, so very, very happy with this achievement.
So I thought we'd start with a very broad question today. So can you talk to us about how you believe that brands add value to businesses overall?
So, brands for us, being an FMCG, is really all, and it's really the way for us to connect with our consumers. It's telling to our consumers what our products are. It's really about also building emotional connection, and ultimately also it's enabling us sometimes to have some premium price to be able to valorize all what we do a bit more. So it's absolutely critical. And one thing you will hear a lot at Mondelēz is that we need to be absolutely brand centric.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And what do you think are some of the key things to consider when businesses are actually trying to build strong brands?
Well, that's for me, it starts with the most important, which is the product, to make sure that we have the best possible product, a superior product. And I am very proud to say that 80% of our products at Mondelēz International are superior to their main competitor, which is a very good achievement. The second thing is to make sure you build a brand which is distinctive. So to really build in the consumer minds some things that will be memorable. So it can be through the logo, the product shape, building consistent assets in advertising. That's another very important one. And the last one, but not least, is making sure we have the right brand positioning, which is relevant for our consumers, and in particular, which will not only build a very clear functional benefit, but at the same time build an emotional connection with our consumers. And in snacks in particular, we are in the world of pleasure. We are in the world of really being part of the lives of our consumers, and it's a great playground to build very strong brands. Just listening and capturing these unique human connections every day for our consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. And clearly we're living in a particularly volatile time at the moment. What do you see as the main headwinds for the business in the next year, and how are you as Mondelēz planning to overcome them?
Yeah, not surprisingly, the main headwind recently has been inflation. So the cost of goods, everything has been increasing in terms of price. So we had to take some action also in terms of pricing. And obviously this is putting more pressure on our demand. But we are working hard through all levers to really help continue to grow the company, and it is working. Our growth in volume has been quite solid in the last years, and also in the short term in 2023. This has been possible through working a lot on what we call revenue growth management, making sure we maintain the right price point, the right format, depending on the channels, and offering more options to our consumers in this particular moment of time. And obviously continuing to invest behind our brands to make sure they are still top of mind and really loved by our consumers.
It's interesting, you've mentioned consumers a number of times there, and obviously consumers are critical for all brands. But how do you approach keeping a strong consumer connection for your brands at Mondelēz? How do you actually go about that from a consumer-centric perspective?
Yeah, so it's first, I repeat myself here, is making sure we have superior products. That the taste is there, the packaging is there. So that's the first entry, I would say, with the consumers. The other element is to make sure we connect with them through our advertising, through our digital activations, to our trade activations, in a way which is relevant to them and that will engage them and continue to build the relationship we have. So on our brands like Oreo, Cadbury, Milka, we have a lot of great work to really make sure our brands are in the consumers' minds and hearts, and continue to build that relationship.
And we talked about the fact that the world around us has changed quite dramatically. That impacts marketers, but it also impacts consumers. So how would you say your consumers have changed over the last 5 years?
So I would say there are things that don't change, or let's say continue to strengthen. The great news for us is that snacking is very solid in the consumer habits, and we see more and more consumers willing to snack. It's part of their life, and that's great. And we see our segments grow overall. But then we see evolutions, maybe sometimes in what consumer needs are within these snacking habits. So the first thing I would say, indulgence is evolving, probably moving from a very functional aspect, so great pleasure, more taste and the best tasting products, to sometimes a bit more emotional or mental. So really consumer acknowledging that they want some indulgence that's important for their day, but also to keep their mood, so that's kind of a bit new. Obviously, all the aspects of well-being and mindful snacking are more and more important, and we are obviously working hard to make sure we answer those needs. So there are new needs like gluten-free or vegan, or making sure we have the right portions for people who want to control their calories, for example, and we are very active in that field. And finally, since sustainability is absolutely critical for our consumers. So understanding where the ingredients are coming from, making sure we have the right use of packaging. So lots of questions from our consumers, which are growing.
It's interesting you mentioned sustainability, so I'll come back to that topic a little later on. So clearly at Mondelēz you have a range of very successful global brands. Just wondered if you had any thoughts on how you can strike that very difficult balance for marketers sometimes between delivering consistent global messaging, but also localizing your messaging with consumers in specific markets. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yes. So the first thing I would say is that actually, as a company, we have an amazing portfolio of brands, which is very balanced between what we call global brands, which are around 55% of our business, and what we call local jewels. We have around 60 brands which are more local, playing in one country, maybe sometimes two, but definitely not global, which are a very important part of our business. And playing with that balance was important for us, and we were historically investing mostly on our global brands. We have been rebalancing that, so continue to invest highly in our global brands, but starting to invest also more on our local brands, and this has been very good for us. And when you see behind me Côte d'Or, which is mostly France and Belgium, it's a very iconic brand there. We have in each market, some very incredible local jewels that we are very proud of. So my first point is, depending obviously of each company, but in our case, finding the right balance between global and local in the portfolio management is important. Then as far as global brands are concerned, and I strongly believe in global brands, what is important for me is to have a very clear global brand positioning foundation. Usually those things should and can be global. So if you take a brand like Cadbury or Oreo, all markets are playing with exactly the same foundations. What changes is how you activate it and making sure you understand the local consumers, the local insights, to drive the right programs, the right activations that is really going to ignite the connections with our consumers. So if you go around the world, you will see similar things on Oreo in China, in the US, in Europe, but at the end of the day, they are different. So it will be probably different flavors sometimes, or same starting point in terms of ID for communication, but really localized. And same on Cadbury. Our big idea on Cadbury is around generosity, and generosity in the UK is very different from generosity in Australia or in India. And when you can crack that, that's where you are really successful. So and I think we are quite good at doing that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's interesting you talk about insights, because I would imagine that insights are particularly key in taking a global strategy and localizing it. But I just wondered, how do you actually go about implementing a specific insight within the business? It sounds easy to say, but I'm sure it's very difficult to do. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on implementation of insights.
Yeah, you're right. So we have plenty of data. We have, we are and more through digital. So and obviously we measure a lot of things. We listen a lot. So we get a lot of information. The point, as you say, is how do we transform it in real actions? No, so having clear diagnostic to maybe take some business decisions in terms of investment, in terms of, for example, shopper. Is a big area to make sure we have the right price points, we have the right formats by channel. So this could be probably hard data. Then you have more emotional aspects. Now, so when you, I was speaking about generosity just before. No, so understanding that's a big idea, that's a big human value. But what does that mean for an Indian consumer? What does that mean for an English consumer? It's much more soft, no, as a skill. So. But when done well, this can really unleash incredible advertising, for example. So in India, what we have discovered is that generosity plays at its best when we are speaking about bringing different social classes together. No, so that's a big area for us. In other markets, South Africa, for example, the family will be more at the center of where we need to land our stories. So. For me, insights are sometimes very hard, and this can drive very big decisions in terms of shopper, in terms of price or whatever, but it has also to be very soft. And it's all about having the right teams to leverage those insights the right way.
Yes, of course. And you talked about generosity. Do you have another specific example of where a consumer insight has actually directly and tangibly influenced a decision that you've made in the business for the better?
I mean, we have plenty of examples. If I take a brand like Oreo, which is more about playful moments, we have a very playful cookie, and this is enabling playful moments between consumers. For example, children and their dads, or two adults together. And the way we would play that in Argentina or in Brazil or in the US or in the UK is very different. And it's really around understanding our consumers, their lives, and where those playful moments will make more sense for the consumers. No, so that's another way, for example.
Yeah. Makes sense. Sounds like you've got lots of examples to draw from. So just thinking about the future, how do you think that the world of marketing and brand building is likely to change in the next few years? And where do you see the opportunities for Mondelēz and Mondelēz brands?
Brand building will change, but I also believe that many fundamentals will remain. No, so we spoke a bit before about what was important to build a strong brand, and this will remain. Having the best potential product, to build the right distinctive assets, to be consistent over time in what we build with our consumers and across channels. This will remain, and even more important over time. What will change dramatically is, and we are living it already, is the tools and the channels. No, so we spoke about insights. The way to capture insights is much more digital. We can become much more intelligent, adding AI on top of the data that we get. So this will change. I think insights and analytics in particular is in a big revolution. On the advertising side of things, also we are now, and at Mondelēz we invest more than 60% in advertising in digital media. That's a totally different way to operate. We need to be much more personalized. We need to be much more part of the culture to really be part of the conversation. And so these are very new ways of communicating. And I think we are doing a great job to learn how to do that. And it's exciting and that's fun. And I think it's enabling a lot of possibilities.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of the future, we talked about sustainability a little bit earlier. Can you tell us a little about your sustainability agenda?
Yeah, so sustainability has been in the heart of the company since its foundation a bit more than 10 years ago, and I would say before that, even when the company was in different contexts. But interestingly enough, last year, as we were moving on with our strategy and moving to a new step, we have added sustainability as the fourth pillar of our strategy, acknowledging the importance of it for everyone, for our consumers, for our employees, for our customers, and obviously for the society overall. So we feel very responsible about that. And I would say we have two big strategies. The one thing is to be really leading in the areas where we matters as a company the most. So especially leading the way on our key ingredients. Cocoa and wheat are our key ingredients. So we have a lot of very important programs and proprietary programs behind cocoa and wheat. On cocoa, it's called Cocoa Life, and on wheat, it's called Harmony. We can speak a bit more in detail after that if you wish. The other point is really contributing to what is important for the world now. So in particular, climate change and CO2 is critical. So we are on our journey to be CO2 neutral for 2020, and we are making a lot of progress in reducing our CO2 in that journey. And specifically in packaging, we have a huge program called Light and Right, where we are pushing to have a totally recyclable packaging. So now we are at 95, and we are aiming to be at 100% soon. But also reducing packaging when possible, changing to paper or recycled plastic when possible. So lots of progress in that sense.
Yeah, that all makes sense. That sounds fantastic. And at Kantar, obviously, we talk to lots of clients lots of the time. And just wondered, I think one of the challenges that clients talk about when it comes to sustainability is how to make their sustainability agenda actually relevant and meaningful to consumers. So just wondered, you talked about your overall strategy. What are your plans and how are you sort of implementing that on a consumer basis? Why should consumers care? Interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and that's not easy because these topics are complex. Now they are quickly very technical. The other thing which is important to me is we have very strong brands with what we call very clear purposes. We are not changing the purpose of the brands to embrace sustainability. We are trying to do what's right first, and maybe not always speak about it, but then when we want to speak about it with our consumers and make it in a way which is relevant for that brand and which is going to strengthen its core purpose. No? So how do you speak about Cocoa Life, which is our chocolate program, cocoa program, from a Cadbury perspective will be very different on how do you speak about Côte d'Or. No? So we are trying really to understand how we connect our programs to the brand positioning, and then really try to see how we can activate that to make our programs aware and also why not drive growth, no? Because it's very important for consumers, and I sincerely believe that if we do that well, that will drive growth. It's not only a cost to play, right? So and we have I'm saying it's not easy, so we are in a journey, but we start to have great examples. So for example, you will see now in all our chocolate brands almost a logo on Cocoa Life. This is well received with our consumers. They don't always understand all the details, but it's a proof of quality. Sometimes even people will associate it with better taste, so just working on the quality of our ingredients makes sense. But also, for example, we have very good activations with the trade because these interest our customers a lot. Where, for example, in Canada, we are doing every year with the customer a very strong activation in store to showcase what we do with Cocoa Life and Cadbury, and that's a great example of how can you bring it in the consumer story, but at the same time drive sales.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. That was very, very detailed, and we're certainly seeing in our data this year and in previous years that, again, consumer perceptions around sustainability and brand behaviour are critical to growth and driving value for the future.
And I think there is not one consumer. No, there are many different consumers, and I think some consumers will be more interested in sustainability than others. So for me, one point also which is important for me is to make the information available for those who are really interested and make it a critical criteria for decision. It's not the case for everyone. So how do we communicate through digital, through Unpack? There are many new ways to be more targeted and make sure it lands to the consumer for whom it's the most important. So I distinguish also, our big communications that is more for everyone, and then more targeted communications for people that really care about it.
Martin, thanks very much again for joining us today.
Thank you.